Our speaker today, Anne-Marie Mohr, has taught at Washington University since 2006. She teaches acting, improvisation, and embodied communication courses. She's the executive director of Project Present, whose mission is to improve the quality of life for older adults, professional caregivers, care partners, and individuals living with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. Project Present's evidence-based programming combats isolation, reduces stress, and cultivates creativity. Mohr has her MA in drama, is a professional applied improv practitioner, a certified dementia practitioner, a master interprofessional educator. She has taught, directed, and acted both locally and internationally. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Anne-Marie Mohr and let her take over from here.
Hello. Hello, everyone. I'm going to throw up my slides and get started. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all of you to come back. That was a week last week. So we're gonna get started with what I needed to be doing last week, which was breathing as I'm like trying to navigate the stress of technology. So I would love for all of us, before we start, just to take a moment. We're going to do something called box breathing. Some of you might be familiar with it, but we're going to get our fingers out and we're simply going to draw a box. And as we draw that box, we're going to follow a sort of pattern. So let's breathe in as we draw up, and then we're going to hold our breath across the top. Exhale down. Hold your breath across the bottom. Let's try it again. Breathe in. Hold. Exhale. Hold. One last time. Breathe in. Hold. Exhale. Hold. Thank you. Thank you for taking a moment to breathe. This is something that I think is so valuable for all of us, and working with caregivers and individuals and any human, it is the quickest way to get yourself from a feeling of up here to a place of calm. And so I really try to advocate for breathing. Really important. Like was just mentioned, the mission of Project Present is to improve the quality of life for older adults, care partners, professional caregivers, and individuals living with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. And we really do that with trying to improve communication, enhance connection, cultivate creativity, and really promote joyful collaboration. So today, like mentioned before, the title is Connecting Creatively Through Communication with Older Adults Experiencing Dementia and Memory Loss. So let's dive in. Project Present has been a 501c3 since 2018, and it really all started. I was working with an organization called Memory Care Home Solutions. Many of you might be familiar with it. If not, it's an amazing nonprofit in St. Louis that works with both caregivers and individuals living with dementia. And they had me training their staff, so really working to kind of help their staff with communication skills. And from there, they brought up, well, have you ever thought about your work with caregivers and individuals living with Alzheimer's? And I had never thought about that. And I became sort of like weirdly obsessed, and things started rolling from there. And Project Present was then born in 2018 after doing a series of partnership and programming with Memory Care Home Solutions. So our organization, we offer really 3 different types of programming, and people can enter wherever is right for them. So some people can just do one, the support groups or the dementia communication training, or some individuals are involved in all 3 types of programming. So the first is our dementia and communication training. And so what we do is we work with both professional caregivers as well as individuals caring for loved ones in their home, and really give them an overview and understanding of, all of the different neurodegenerative diseases that cause dementia, that symptom that deals with memory loss and all of the things that dementia is related to. So really educating people about dementia, as well as then really diving into how to communicate more effectively, to reduce that stress, improve quality of life, and sometimes handle those challenging situations. I think that's one of the biggest things I face when working with groups. It's how to like communicate more effectively. Logic and reason don't always work. So what do I do? So we really just try to give individuals more tools and resources to help them do what they're probably already doing, but just giving them more and more support as well. So today we'll talk a little bit about more of that communication area. And the other two areas, the next one is our improv sessions. And so these really are opportunities for joy. I mean, we come together with a group and we sit in a circle and we have an hour where individuals have no mistakes. Everything said is brilliant, and we yes and everything. So that's really the goal, is getting people together to connect with others in a creative environment where they succeed. There is no failure at all. So these we provide all over St. Louis, working and partnering with different groups and organizations. And we'll talk about those a little bit more too today. And then the last thing we offer are support groups. So we have both virtual as well as in-person support groups, and we meet twice a month, and individuals can come whenever they want to obviously share. And then we do something unique. After each support group, we do a follow-up newsletter inspired by what was being talked about at that particular session, because we kind of take out the work for the caregivers so that they then immediately get the resources and things that were discussed, things that they were looking for, and then have those at their fingertip and are able to then access what they need. So those are what we offer, our 3 different types of programming through Project Present. A lot of our work is rooted in, as you heard, I've said now a couple times, improv. And I know that word is terrifying. As before the session day, we were talking about it, like, I know I've been teaching improv, working in the field of improv. You say that word and people, there is a spectrum, right? There are people that are like, yeah, bring it on. And then on the other end, there are people that really want to leave the room, vomit, whatever. It causes some anxiety in them. I like to stress that with our work, that word before improv, applied, is really the key, because what we're trying to teach is that these guidelines and skills that are inherent in the craft of improv really can help individuals connect and communicate more fully. I think we know caregivers are improvising every day, right? From moment to moment, hour to hour, day to day, it always is changing. So caregivers are already improvising. So we like to give them skills and tools to sort of improve and help them in doing what they are already doing. So our guidelines are rooted really in 5 different principles. And the first, which I would say is the hardest for all of us, is to get out of our head. Right? I think as a caregiver, as a care partner, we have this voice, this censor, this judge, this worry. I shouldn't have done that. Should I do this? What should we be doing? And that is constantly cycling through the mind of a caregiver. And I think when we are up here, it really takes us out of being in the moment and being present. And it can cause us oftentimes to spiral and worry and really not move forward in any positive direction. So I would love to be able to like click, 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 click off everyone's head so that they could just like turn it off. I can't. But the first thing I think that we all can do is start just being aware of when we've transitioned and when we're up here, raise awareness to that so that we can then really focus on being more present. And that makes a big difference when we are present and fully engaged in the moment, especially when we are caring for someone and with someone. It makes a total difference. I think we all know, when someone is not connected, disengaged, not present with you, that you feel that. We also feel when someone is giving us that undivided, fully engaged, present attention. And I think we have a lot more success at communicating and connecting with the person. And from there, we want to think about actively listening. So truly listening, right, to what someone is saying. I think a lot of times we listen to a wee bit and then we get back up in our head and start thinking of our own thing, but really fully taking in what someone is offering. And I think verbals, yes, are important, but I think we also know when we're caring for someone living with dementia, that changes, that our verbals, that language is evolving, changing, being lost perhaps. And so our nonverbals become so important. And we don't practice that. That's not something that we think about and practice as much as our talking. So I really like to raise awareness to being very aware of what someone is offering us through their facial expression, their posture, their tone, their rate. All of those things are communicating volumes. 80% of our communication is nonverbal, and it's also our most honest communication, right? Someone might say something and look, posture, gesture a different way, and it means something very different. So I think it's really valuable to take in a person completely and be very aware of the nonverbals. And also be aware of the nonverbals that we're offering. Sometimes we might not realize, like, we're making a face like this when someone's telling us a story, or my posture's closing off, or I'm not even looking at the person. So really being aware of the nonverbals that we're sharing is really powerful as well. I worked with a caregiver once. He was caring for his wife, and she began speaking her own language. So in the world of improv, right, we say gibberish. And so she had her own language, and he was coming to a meeting and said, I can no longer talk to my wife. Like, we can no longer communicate. And what we realized is she was still communicating in her own language. He just now needed to tap into those nonverbals. So if she was like, do, right? He could read that and simply say to her, I see that you're sad. Or if she was very animated and excited, he could register and let her know what he's seeing. And those powerful statements of letting someone know, I see you're sad. I'm sorry you're frustrated. You seem so excited. That enables someone to feel valued and heard. And that is so important at connecting with a person, because we all want to feel valued and heard. So I always stress in my groups that language never dies, because there's always nonverbal communication, and it speaks more than our words. So we can always rely on that. From there, that listening, we can yes and that's the crux, the core of improvisation. And what that means really is to accept and build. So we're accepting the idea and building from there. So let me give an example. If I was doing an improv scene and I had a partner with me, and the person says, like, oh, here's your chocolate cake. And if I was like, this isn't chocolate cake, right? It's like, wah, wah, wah. That really kills the scene. The person that offered me the cake is like, what? There's like a lack of trust. We really go nowhere. The scene stops. But if the person offers me the chocolate cake and I'm like, oh, yes, chocolate cake. Oh, and it has sprinkles, my favorite, right? I've accepted what's been offered and I've built from there. Now, yes, this makes sense on an improv scene, but this also is very powerful when caring for someone living with dementia, that we are accepting the reality and truth of the individual and building from there. So I know in different, in social work, in different places, there's like therapeutic fitting, small lies, white lies, all of these things that we do to maintain integrity for the person. In working with lots of caregivers, I think sometimes hearing fib, lie, all of those makes people feel a little dirty. Yes, and is a different way of approaching a similar end result, but it's about accepting and building. So an example I can share, I had a caregiver whose husband, every night he would be on the beaches of Alabama. And this woman was like, we're not on the beaches of Alabama. We're in our family room. And she would constantly, and he would be like, no, we're on the beaches. Because in his truth, he was on the beaches of Alabama. So one night she decided to sort of yes and this, and she sat with her husband on the beaches of Alabama. And it enabled her to not have to have that conflict, to accept his truth and reality. And when we think of it that way, we are truly not lying, because we are entering the truth and the reality of the individual who's living with a brain disease that causes them to feel these truths and realities. So we, having full cognitive functioning, can accept that and build from there, and ultimately reduce some of the stress and challenge. I was giving a presentation one time, and a woman, after I gave this example, she's like, yeah, it seems very lovely to be on the beaches of Alabama. That's easy to yes and. But she shared that her mother has like horrific hallucinations. And how do you yes and something that's really, traumatic? And so what we need to understand is those hallucinations, what she is experiencing, are true to her, are her reality. And if the daughter says, no, there's nothing there, that causes issue. The mom is like, yes, it is. So what we can share is, yes, I know you're scared and it's going to be okay. Yes, this is terrifying and I'm here with you. So we can accept what the mother is experiencing and build from that, so that we are showing that we value, we hear, we understand where you're coming from, and that we are going to get through this together. So I think using this yes and is a way of validating a person and then moving forward to make that change. And then the last guideline that we employ is really making others look good, which I think connects to that integrity, that everything we're doing is really trying to maintain integrity of the person. And I think when we're thinking of that, we feel better about ourselves as well as the person feels better about themselves. So maintaining integrity of other is at the forefront of doing all of the things we're doing. All right. So these goals of applied improv in regards to caregiving really kind of break down into fostering flexibility, to learn to let go and give up some control. And let me tell you, I live in the world of improv, but I love control. I love it. So it's hard. And I know as caregivers, it's very hard. I had a caregiver I worked with whose husband every day wanted to wear his dress up fancy clothes to the gym. And every day she would battle with him. No, you have to wear your gym clothes, until finally she really let go of that control and figured, well, he's just going to look like the best dressed guy at the gym. So I think it's all of us knowing how to let go of control when it's okay, and allow ourselves to be a little bit more flexible in the practice of caring. And I think the value of all of this is recognizing our creative potential. Caregiving is a creative process. It is constantly needing to be thinking in new ways, coming up with situations, ways to handle, navigate, interact. And I work with so many people that tell me I am not creative. And I always beg to argue. We are all creative. It's just sometimes we've squashed it down. So I think caregiving enables it to come bubbling back up, to understand that this process is creative. So I do an exercise with groups oftentimes. So like right now, y'all see I have a pen here, and we'll take the pen and I'll say, how would you use this pen other than a pen? Since we're on a webinar, I can't really get your feedback here, but people maybe in the chat could come up with a way. Like, for example, I might use this and I turn it into a bow for a violin. If anyone has any other ideas of how to change this, you can throw it out there. If not, you can think in your heads of how we can use this pen in different ways. And I like to show that, people will come up with like a microphone, they'll be conducting, they'll use it as a spoon, whatever it might be. And I think it's valuable to think about that, because that's caregiving on the daily. It's that it's not always going to be a pen, and it's not always going to be the spoon. And sometimes we're going to get all the way down to pee, and that's okay, because we have to look at things from different perspectives and really allow ourselves that creativity to navigate and handle situations. And yes, we all are creative and we have it in us. And then we can use that in the same way to really problem solve through yes and brainstorming. So sometimes with our support groups, people will be navigating challenging situations, and we use this idea of yes and just to get as many ideas out as possible. Woman was having problems with her husband taking meds, and people just were kind of throwing out every idea, yes and then just letting ideas flow. We can do that with ourselves. When you yes and yourself, you'll come up with more ideas on how to navigate different situations. So it's a really valuable tool to use in connection with others, but also sometimes just in our own minds, because we're very good already at like shutting down and yes butting, or no we should not. And so this is a way of thinking more creatively of how we can navigate these different situations that we're facing on a daily basis. Because ultimately, right, we realize that our mood and attitude are contagious. So the more tools and strategies that caregivers can have to keep themselves feeling their well-being in a good place, that's going to be valuable also for the person living with dementia. So mood and attitude are contagious. So we like to think about that. That's why I like to go back to the very first thing we did, breathing. That breathing is a great way to get that mood and that energy to a better place, because oftentimes we can't be like, I'm going to go take an hour walk and calm down, or I have all this time to go do this or that. Sometimes we have 30 seconds to go into the bathroom, shut the door, and just breathe. So getting ourselves so that we know that our energy is contagious as well to others. All right. We're going to dive into some tools, some strategies that we can all employ. We'll go through a few of these together. So I think one of the first things when communicating someone living with dementia is slowing down, right? I'm speedy, so this is a hard one for me, but really slowing down, and not just with our language, but with our action. So if you're communicating, you're not going to want to be running back and forth from the kitchen to the family room to here, communicating your message. You're going to want to slow it down and be specific and keep it simple. I think we like to over-explain, maybe provide lots of reasoning behind why we're doing what we're doing. And I think that becomes less necessary, that we can keep things more specific, more condensed, to have someone better understand what we're communicating. And I think if we can try to, like I said, slow down. If you have a message to communicate, it's best to do it making eye contact with the person, really getting down at the person's level, speaking and gesturing face to face so that you can really fully connect with the person and see and read those nonverbals to make sure the messaging is landing or if it's not. All right. I think this is an exercise that I always like to do because it really allows us to understand, because part of communication is processing and processing time. So all of us here today, we are going to pretend that we are living with dementia and that our processing time has changed. And I am going to give you all a specific direction. And then I'm going to put my timer on my phone. I want you to get the sense of what processing time that slows down can feel like. And I want you just to kind of like feel this and feel what you would want to do during this time. Okay. So I'm going to ask all of you to go get on your coat. That's 30 seconds. That's a minute. If you're like me, that might have felt like an eternity, right? And I think the first thing that I'd want to do is, if the person I had asked to go get on your coat, I'd probably start giving more direction. You need to get on your coat. We're going to the store. It's in the front closet. Could you go get it on now? And what did I just do? I have just given the individual 66 plus more directions that now the person has to then start processing again. So I like to stress the understanding of how processing time changes. And also, if you feel the need to repeat a direction, you want to repeat it the exact same way so that the individual doesn't have to start over with reprocessing a brand new set of directions. And thinking about how many pieces are actually to that. For all of us, right, we're thinking, go get the coat. That's very easy. I'd walk in, I know exactly where my coat is, I know how to put it on. But for someone living with dementia, sitting in a chair, they might have to first think about, how do I get up off my chair? Which way do I turn? Where is my coat? What is my coat? How do I open this door? I mean, you could break this down into so many different pieces to see how you get to getting a coat. So I really want you to think about how much is to a direction, how simplicity can help, and then the repetition of a command, or not a command, but if you're giving us some sort of direction, to make sure you repeat the same way. And I think from there, a lot of times, probably most people would not be waiting that full minute. So we like to think about mirroring the desired outcome. So perhaps I go with the person, we go together, we walk, we get our coats out of the closet together, and I mirror putting on my coat as the person is putting on those. And we use this in lots of different examples for caregivers, right? Perhaps taking medicine together, eating together, putting on clothes together, so that the individual is also getting visual cues as well as auditory to get the message received and to do what needs to be done. We can also think about this. This is very valuable in terms of that connection we talked about with the individual, mirroring the emotion. That, if someone is feeling frustrated or sad, I don't think we always need to over explain and go into long conversation. Sometimes just that simple, like, I see you're sad, I'm sorry you're sad. Those statements have tremendous power when we're mirroring the emotion of the individual, that we show that we understand where they're coming from, what they're feeling, and how they're doing. And then from there, right, we know that the power of touch in terms of connecting and communicating with a person is very powerful. If they're upset, right, a hug, a handhold, a touch of the arm, all of these things can really connect you with the individual and create that sense of security and comfort. And then just always being aware of the environment or space that you're in. I think we don't always take that into account. It's like the nonverbals. We're not always looking at those, and we're not always looking at where we are, that there's a TV on that's really loud, that the grandkids came over and they're screaming, that we're in a place with a very unusual scent, because sensory things change dramatically as person evolves through the phases of dementia. And so just being very aware of the environment, place, and all the different senses that might be impacted by where the person is. All right. We are going to kind of transition into the world of improv here. But before we do, just thinking about, I think a question always to ask is, when someone seems to be perhaps not themselves, or off, or there's a challenging situation, is to ask, is the person feeling safe or secure? Or are they feeling valued and heard? And when we answer those, we can think about ways of making the person feel safe and secure. If you have a lot of like shadowing happen, there might be agitation. They might not be feeling safe. So using a mantra like, you are safe. I am here. I am here. And that repetition back can be very comforting. If the person is feeling like no one understands them, find ways to give the individual purpose and meaning, letting them feel valued and heard. But these are great places to start to navigate how best to sort of connect with the person to reduce that stress and anxiety. All right. I mentioned before that we do improv sessions as well as these communication trainings. And why? Why do we do improv? I think what we've seen is, for a lot of individuals, both living with dementia, and then we've also learned as caregivers, they're dealing with these things. They're dealing with depression, they're isolating, and there's feelings of inadequacy, right? Someone that's losing memory, that has dementia, feels like, oh, I'm told no all the time, I can't do this anymore. Things are being taken away, no longer being able to drive, all of these sort of things. And also for caregivers, we see depression, we see isolation, and feelings of inadequacy, like, am I doing enough? Am I caring enough? All of these things. So improv is really meant to be like a counter to that, because it's a beautiful craft where there are no mistakes, right? So everything you say is brilliant, and we yes and everything. So if someone is feeling that they're being told no all the time, that they can't do what they used to do, this really works to the opposite of that. And the lovely thing is that memory is not necessary, because it's all about the present moment. And so what we see is that it helps people really build connection, collaboration, and creativity connectivity with one another, and loads of laughter. And there is so much great research about the importance of laughter. We all need to be laughing more. And this is such a great opportunity to bring people together and let them laugh. Good for the mind, the body, and the soul. And it's drug-free, right? We don't have to take any drugs for this. I mean, obviously, we do need drugs for loads of things, but this is an opportunity to bring people together and improve mood without using any sort of drugs. We've been doing research for the last 5 years using a very simple scale. It's 5 faces. So when people enter a session, how are they feeling? And then when they leave a session, how are they feeling? And we've seen tremendous improvement in mood from going to a 1-hour-long improv session. So they come in maybe at one place and they leave in an improved state of mind, or they stay, if they're already in a good mood, they stay in that good mood. And I think that's really, really powerful. We know social connection is the key, right? Bringing people together. And then if we can bring people together to laugh and have joy, that is extremely powerful. We do this with older adults, care partners, older adults with cognitive disabilities. So we really run the gamut with our groups. And I think something to think about, I've had people say to me, when we're working with individuals with dementia or memory loss, they'll say, well, they might not even remember that they did the session. And I say, that's fine. Because what we do note is the mood stays, right? So that feeling, good feeling that one gets, that can stay. You might not remember that you were at an improv session, and that's fine. But what we do want is people to be in a good headspace, feeling that they're in a better mood and improving that quality of life. So that's really the goals for our improv sessions. Here's a couple of them. And just to give you guys an idea, because a lot of people are like, okay, what do you mean? So we sit in these circles and we always start off with a warm up. So you all kind of done some today, right? We always start off with a different sort of breathing exercise. We then move into like physical. So we warm up our bodies like actors do as well. And then we do loads of vocal exercises. So for example, we might do a tongue twister and everyone would say flash message, 5 times. And so we do all these warm-up exercises. We always start the session by saying, everything you say is brilliant. There are no mistakes. And we yes and everything. So people like that foundation to be set. You kind of know you're in a good place. And then we build from there. We do exercises that are nonverbal. So we might have like here, I have this focus ball. Can y'all see it? And I would look at one of my friends in the circle and I would throw it to them. They would catch it and then throw it to someone else. So we have a series of nonverbal exercises. And that enables us to work with diverse audiences. Some people are nonverbal, so they can participate. And then we move into exercises with language. We might even pass that pen around the circle and let people turn it into whatever they want. We do marketing games, partner scenes, the news. Everyone gets a present at the end. So there's a lot of different games and excuse me, exercises we play, and we really tailor it to the organization and the group that we're working with. Hold on a second. Let me drink a little water here. All right. So that, I think I wanted to end again with a little breathing. So if we just want to take in